Welcome back to Fortnite with me, Royal Demon, and I want to talk a bit about building up a decent defense. Now, when you're playing on your own, like me now, it's good to have a solid defense. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you're being attacked on like 3 or sometimes even 4 different sides at once. So then you have to have a really solid defense if you want to make it out alive, or at least just complete the objective, which often means protect a certain thing. So I'm in Plankerton now. This is the first storm shield mission, and I kind of did what I could here. Now, this doesn't necessarily represent the best defense, but it's pretty much what I could work with, considering my low amount of resources I have. You try to work with what you can. And what I usually do in an environment like this, where time doesn't really play a role, because in these storm shield defense missions, time doesn't matter. There is no reward bonus for doing it quick. Even though I'd say on higher power levels, I wouldn't really matter that. It's better that you put a day extra than this for the speed run. You know, that you just ignore the speed run and you just work like on it for 3 or maybe even 4 days on your defense and have like a really good defense than trying to rush it to get the speed bonus and then fail, because that's what you don't want. Anyway, what do? I try to get all the resources. See, as you can see, I build up a construction up there to get all the resources I could get. It's like I have all the stone, all the plants, all the trees. Well, there's no metal here, unfortunately, but it's like I pretty much try to get as much as I can, and then you put it at work. Now, the core foundation should always be your strongest material, which would be metal. But since I don't have a lot of metal, I go for bricks. Now, if you get the skill, you can also upgrade it. I don't do that this time, because this is the first defender mission, so I take it it's not going to be that tough. And I don't have that much stone to spare. Like, I have 170, which is still some, but if I reinforce all these walls, I'm going to be out of stone, and then I can't repair walls if they get damaged. But always the core foundation should be one of your strongest metal. Either reinforced stone or reinforced metal. Wood I would not recommend, especially later in the game when you encounter elemental enemies, like fire elemental enemies. They can just set wood stuff on fire. What I do like to use wood for is for ceilings and floors, because even though they're still useful and necessary, usually the enemy focus is not on these parts. They usually go for the walls. So the walls have to be the strongest, and the ceilings and the floors usually not. Now, I know there are enemies that shoot projectiles and that can do a lot of damage. And if they destroy, let's say, the ceiling, then the trap also disappears. Now, another thing I would really recommend you to do, always build an outer wall around your base. Now, usually I would build extra walls, but since I don't know from which direction the enemy is going to attack, I would suggest, usually you get like a warning that you know from which direction they're going to attack. Like if you play not a storm shield defense mission, but like a standard mission like fight storm, ride the lightning, those type of missions. If you do those, once you insert the blue glow, you'll know from which direction they attack. And I would focus more building the traps towards that direction. But keep in mind that the AI of the game will keep an eye on what you're doing. So if you build like defenses strongly on one side and badly on another side, the enemies will just circle around. I've seen it happen. I've even had a mission where the spawn spot for the enemy changed twice, just to hit me at my weakest spot. And it almost cost me the mission. I almost lost. And I can always recommend, try to build traps all around if you can. And I did that. Like I put wall traps there, or ceiling traps, wall traps there, and here floor traps, like everywhere. Try to put as many traps down as you can. You want to protect your situation as much as you can. Also, always good to have a door to step inside if you need to. See, if you have to go inside for like a certain blue glow or to access this thing to start the mission, it's good to have a door. So, you know, don't forget that. Well, you can always add one later, but you know, I'm just saying. Okay, another thing you want to keep in mind is to put like some extra defense. As you can see in these intervals, I put some extra. See, in case they hit the the corners of my defense, I got some extra reinforcements here. So the spikes, they can't run too quickly over them. Another thing you also want to keep in mind is that some enemies will use like they can jump. Like let's say they would attack from the south, they could jump on top. See, as you can see, I have like a small wall around, so they can't just drop down. It's just a little precaution. It's like you should always anticipate for like almost everything. As crazy as you can think of it, keep in mind that the game will most likely try it. I've seen enemies jump on top of my buildings. I've seen enemies, well, I think that's more like a glitch or a bug in the game, but that they phase through walls. That's also unfortunate, but it happens sometimes, and you really should be prepared for that. Now, you're still your own best defense. Like me with my gun, have a good gun in your hands, and that can really make the difference. What you do also want to keep in mind is to keep some resources at hand. As you can see, I have some wood and metal. Oh, no, not wood and metal. I have wood and stone in reserve. I have some extra, which is useful because if things are broken, I can repair it now. See, if I had more stone, I would definitely upgrade the outer walls a bit, and also the inner walls a bit, and probably the ceilings and floors as well, so the traps can't be destroyed too quickly. But like I said, right now I don't really have a luxury of that, so I have to work with what I have. But like I said, it's still a pretty decent construction I made. It's not amazing, but this is pretty much like a very basic idea of defense. Like the big walls in the center, the small walls around it. So you can easily see when they're attacking, let's say from the north here, I can easily just gun them down. I'm protected by my own traps because your own traps don't damage you. So you can easily stand underneath the trap. If the enemies start swarming to get in here, they get attacked by the trap, and hopefully it kills them or weakens them enough that I can kill them. So it's really important that you stay close to your own stuff. I can wander out here, but here I'm way more vulnerable. And you can get easily surrounded, and then you're in a lot of trouble. Now, one last thing I wanted to tell you is sometimes you also have natural terrain that can help you. Now, this is water, but let's say this would be a ravine. I could build over here so they can't attack from this side. See, the gaps, sometimes you also have buildings that are like, if buildings have a basement, you can use the basement. You hit the floor out on the ground floor, and then you have a basement. You can use the basement as like a gap that the enemies can't cross, because as long as you don't build stairs in the gap, enemies will not try to drop down in it because they know they can't get out, so they won't. So that is pretty much like a natural defense. And sometimes you also have like a ravine on maps. It depends where it is. Not in the storm shield defense missions, as far as I know, but in other objective missions you sometimes have that. The location of your objective is then next to a ravine or something. So make use of what you can. Another good thing I can also recommend you, study the map. Like, look at where the approaches are. It helps when you know from which direction the monsters come once you put in the blue glow and other objective missions. But study the map. Watch how can they approach to your fort. What are the ways how they can get up, and try to block them as fast as you can. Don't let them get all the way to your fort if you can. If you can slow them down with like building these small walls on their path and they can't go around it, it can save you like 30 seconds that you can then spend on killing other enemies somewhere. So it's all, you know, stuff that can help you win the battle. It's all these little things that can add up to the win, and that's how you can win.